The engine is starting up.
For launch. GC, go. Guidance, go. Fido, go. Prop, go. GNC, go. Max, go. Eagle, go. Ecom,
go. Pending final steps. The cabin link check.
3, 2, 1.
Is there anyone here that would like to communicate with us? Can you give us a sign?
Welcome to the R.I.F.T Nation Network, the R&N, putting a slide in your glide and a dip in your hip. Welcome to the mothership, the home of the travelers of the universe. With shows throughout the week, you can find us at Instagram, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, and more. Everything you could want, everything you can need right here, right now. From the paranormal to the supernatural. From comedy to the spiritual. And now, your featured show. Shall we begin?
It's showtime, folks!
Podcast may contain material that some listeners may find sensitive, offensive, or disturbing. We strive to create respectful and informative content, but topics discussed may include mature themes such as violence, explicit language, or controversial subjects, triggering content including discussions related to mental health, trauma, or other sensitive issues, explicit language. Occasionally, our guests or hosts may use strong language. While we aim to handle these topics with care and empathy, we encourage listeners to exercise discretion. If you find any content distressing, consider skipping or seeking support. Remember that this podcast is not a substitute for professional advice. If you need assistance, please consult a qualified expert.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Becoming Universally Aligned. And this is my guest, Erin Brown from Consciously Erin. I'm just going to pull up the chat here too. Be patient with me because this is my first episode ever, but I'm super excited to have you on and to talk about the Schumann because I know that it is more prevalent than it has ever been, and I'm feeling it more than I ever have. So just I wanted you to come in. I listen to you every day, actually. I have my notifications set on YouTube, so I'm sitting having my coffee, and then I get to listen to your talk on the Schumann. So can you just tell me how you got into it?
I would love to, but the first thing I want to ask you is look at this beautiful place where you are.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what you were doing there? Like you have all these beautiful sound bowls behind you and all this stuff. I would love to hear a little bit about what you do and what you're bringing up here because this is your show.
Yeah, so Monday nights I am in St. Mary's at the Presbyterian Church, and I do a sound bath for an hour, probably an hour and a half. So my cheeks are all red whenever I use the sound bowls. The energy, it just warms me up, heats me up. So I'm here, and so that's at 7, and then I'm going to be doing the podcast from here every night right after. So yeah, I'm in the church and it's beautiful. The sound in here, it's limestone, so the sound just it circles and vibrates back. It's really nice in here. So
Well, that's really exciting.
yeah.
Well, Thank you for the invitation to be here, and thank you for everyone who is joining us. My name is Erin Brown. I call myself a frequency and clarity coach, mainly because that's the easiest way to describe what I do, right? What you and I are talking about this evening is the Schumann resonance, which has become a hot topic, especially as of late. There are a lot of creators, especially on many different networks, that have started talking about this, and it begs the question, how or why would this be affecting me, a small little human on this big giant planet, right?
Yeah.
So, to tell you a little bit about how I arrived where I did, my background is I spent 25 years as a nurse in healthcare and was teaching medicine at a university here in Illinois in the United States when I had my awakening experience. Through that awakening experience, I started to recognize that I was no longer really aligned with the teachings of just Western medicine and felt calling to expand into something greater. At the same time that I'm going through all this, my physical body was going through a lot of weird things. And I happened to coincidentally be having lunch with a friend of mine who was a meteorology student at the time. And I was telling
Okay.
him about all this stuff that was going on. And he's sitting there, and it was very funny because he's literally eating his salad. And he's like, "Have you ever heard of the Schumann?" And I go, "No, what's that?" And I said, "Is that a weather thing?" And he said, "Well, the Schumann is a set of measurements, and there's many different ranges of frequency, but it's frequency based. And I watch it because it tells me about weather patterns, but it's related to the sun, it's related to the transmission of energy across a planetary scale." And he kind of, the while he's saying this, the imagery I started to get was like a reminder that we are all energetic beings. Our entire bodies are composed of water, which is a huge conductor for energy, not to mention that our hearts and brains are electrical in nature, right? So the
Yeah.
idea started to form in my mind. Well, it seems logical to me, coming from the side of science, right? It feels logical to me that as beings who are basically giant conductors walking around meat suits with water injected in them, it would affect us on an energetic level. But I didn't understand what that might look like or what that would be. So I took his information and I started just every single day. I would check this graph that he sent me a link to. He said, "Check this graph. This is the one I use." Okay. So I'm checking his graph. So every day for 365 days, I checked his graph, and then I took a data point based on how I felt versus what the graph was showing. And then at the end of a year, and it took a whole year, I went back to the university where I was still working, and I took all those data points and plugged it into an AI, statistical analyst, and it has a big acronym I don't remember, and just simply asked, is there a correlation here? Understanding, of course, correlation, causation, not necessarily the same. The
Yeah.
correlation is the indication that you need to look deeper. And sure enough, it spit the data out, and it was a nice bell curve. And if there's a bell curve, it's kind of like where there's smoke, there's fire. So I started to recognize that all these little patterns that I had picked up in my own energy have some meaning to them somewhere. And in science, the next step you take with that is you ask peer review. You put it out to your peers and you say, "This is what I've discovered. Can you duplicate this, or does this have meaning to you?" This is how science works. But
Yeah.
in my community, the scientists I work with are not interested in this woo woo world. You know what I'm saying? So to me, the next logical step was to present this to my peers, which is social media. Unfortunately for me, social media at this time in my life, right? So
Yeah.
I went on and very precariously just made a video, and I said, "Hey, this is what I found. This is what it means for me. Does that mean anything to you?" And threw it out there. And I got such a response that it would have been illogical of me to disregard the response that I got. And there's a lot of people who want to say that it's illogical I'm drawing conclusions and this and that. You know what? Science is only science fiction till it's not, friends. I mean, think about that, right? Like, how many things in your daily life are you walking around with that 100 years ago people would have told you were crazy? That's never going to happen. FaceTime specifically comes to mind, right? Here we
Yeah.
are having this conversation. I have a clear memory of when I was a kid going to see Back to the Future and Marty McFly got fired on FaceTime. And I remember my dad
Oh.
looking at me and saying, "That'll never happen."
I don't
So,
remember that.
so I
So,
just
and it makes sense,
and
doesn't it?
Star Trek is a perfect predictor of technologies. We actually there are scientific articles that are coming out now talking about things like tractor beams and teleportation and quantum entanglement. These words that used to be science fiction are coming back into the forefront, and they're starting to be science fact. And we, as human beings, have to understand that there's something beyond what we can perceive in our little bitty world, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
even our ability to perceive the world around us. We can see this much of a light scale that is this large.
Right.
So if you can only see this, imagine how much you're missing, what you
Yeah.
cannot see, right?
And for the response back to you, because people like that. So if you're feeling it, it is a collective. We're all feeling it, right? So one person has to go ahead and lead
Right.
and say that, and then
Right.
it
And
just follows.
to be fair, I mean, I am not by any stretch of the imagination the first person to say this. I am not the first person. There are studies done about this. So
Yeah.
I'm not the first person to say it. I might be the first person that you've come across, or I might be the first person you've seen on TikTok, but I'm certainly not the first person. I am just the first person who's been brave enough to say it loud enough that other people are actually looking. I mean, there's another creator on YouTube. His name is Stefan Burns. He's been doing this for
Yes.
years.
Yes. Yes.
He's very gifted and incredibly smart at what he does. He and I agree. We've never had a conversation. I don't even know if he knows that I exist, but he and I agree data wise on 99% of what he's saying. We just deviate slightly on some of the other things. And that's important, because without that deviation, conformity doesn't inspire growth. That
Right.
deviation, that gap between what I pick up and what he picks up is your invitation to acknowledge and to investigate yourself and to then expand into what's all being offered for you.
Right. So can you just talk about the Schumann for a minute now?
Yeah.
So you're talking about 100 years ago, but this was actually in 1952, right? Is
Right
when
around
they
there. So I don't have any of the dates specifically in front of me, but the reason it's called the Schumann is because the scientist who sort of started putting this all together's name was Winfried Schumann, right? This is a set of harmonics that is measured in our ionosphere. And when you think of the ionosphere, you want to think of the Earth and then think of like a cloud around it, a bubble, all right? This is a very resonant chamber, and energy kind of vibrates in this bubble around the Earth, and it sort of sends out frequencies. The Schumann, what it's measuring is a combination of many different factors. It's including coronal mass ejections from the sun, lightning strikes globally around the world, tectonic plate movements, volcanoes, all kinds of stuff. All naturally occurring, though, right? So we're not
right,
looking at man-made frequencies with this. This is all naturally occurring. And the idea behind it is that, like a bell, when it gets rung, it has that waveform, like your bowls.
right.
When you get
Yeah,
it has the waveform. This is the ionosphere captures that waveform and kind of sends it back and back until the waveform wears itself out, right?
right.
So
Yeah,
when I am looking at the graph, that's what I'm looking at, is the resonance or the reverberation of whatever big energy has been happening. There are
and
Sorry, go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say, you keep going. I was just gonna talk about the different colors. So the light, the energy coming in, and
Yes.
actually reading it.
So reading it has been so I want everyone to understand that when you're watching my videos and I'm interpreting for you what I'm seeing, right? I want you to understand that this is based on my personal interpretation of how it affects me on a personal scale. And some people, many people feel it differently, react to it differently, and that's perfectly okay. It's not a measurement of you're wrong or bad or indifferent. It doesn't matter. This is just me saying how it affects me, right? But
Right.
the big white energy on the graph tends to be, for me, the most energy intensive. So on those days, that's like new energy coming in for me. It charges up my body physically. I can feel the physical vibration all throughout my body, like the tingling, the vibrating. I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah.
But my mind is also receiving download after download of idea after idea. And I feel very much like I'm on 100, right?
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
there are days when you might see a lot of red on the Italian graph, which is another graph that I use. This is a lower, different frequency. And for me, this is earth based frequency coming forward. So this is all about release. So when you see a lot of red, it usually is indicated in the lower chakras first, is where it starts because it's earth
Hmm.
based. Our lower three chakras are associated with earth based living, and it moves its way forward depending on how big it is. I don't know a better word, is how extensive the energy is.
Yeah.
Um, there's kind of a lot of nuance to it to try to go into, but the general basics of it are is white is new incoming energy, red is release of old energy, which can bring up a lot of triggers. It can make you very reactive in the moment because it's bringing up a lot of old stuff. So there's a
Yes.
couple different things. I mean, there's a lot to it, but you know, I encourage everyone to do the observations yourself. I mean, listen to what I say, but more importantly, how do you feel? And then continue following that.
Yeah. And so a lot of the times too, when there's a lot of the white and in the higher areas too, that integration is
Mhm.
where people aren't sleeping. And the dreams and the intuitive messages, all of that is coming in as well, a lot of the times, right?
Well, I think it affects everybody differently for sure.
Hmm.
Integration for me on the graph, it almost looks like texture in the background of the graph. These are these very thin vertical lines and they run across almost like the background of the graph. It looks like if you ran your fingers, you could feel the texture.
Oh, yeah.
For me, this is a very confusing time because my body is physically exhausted and my mind is going 1,000 miles an hour. So it feels almost diametrically opposed. What I have always received this as is it's kind of like the gentle push from your loving mother to eat your stinking vegetables, right? Like it's never going to force you to do it, but it's kind of pushing the plate back across to you saying, okay, let's do this. Now, everyone reacts differently to this type of energy. It has always affected me the same, always without fail. On those days, my body is physically exhausted and my mind is going gangbusters, and it's difficult for me to sleep. When it comes to dreams and stuff like that, I think that gets a little more into a personal thing. Like everybody's so different,
Right.
and you may be receiving through the dream state, but not everybody does. I don't know. I have not personally found that integration makes dreaming any more intense or less intense. I think it has more to do with where you are and what you're doing with the energy that you're integrating more than the actual energy itself.
And do you find when when it's green and it's calm, so this is our time to rest and get our energy back up
Yes.
and
So,
and
yes.
ground more than anything, right?
Yes. So when the graph is blue, this is homeostasis. The dark blue of the graph is when there's balance between incoming and outgoing energies. We're not getting pushed new energies. We're not getting encouraged to release. We're in a steady calm. Green on the graph is human interference. So that green background noise is almost always there in 12-hour bursts because that's when the sun rotates back around. That's when the graph picks up the energy, right?
Right.
But the blue, that calm period, yes, that's when you're being asked to give yourself permission to just rest in that moment. Something that happens very commonly is people start to feel a sense of restlessness during that period. And the first instinct is to jump up and do something. But from what I understand is everything is energy, and that restlessness is simply coming from the dissonance between where you are and where you're going frequency wise. And if you can sit down and let yourself open to a state of meditation, you integrate that feeling instead of fighting against it. So while your first instinct is to get up and run a mile, that's not going to help you. Sit down, ground yourself, and release it and bring those two pieces together.
Right. So do you think like matching frequencies or balancing frequencies, like using frequencies for the Schumann is a good idea, right? Like and out in nature too, I guess, any of those things.
So my personal opinion is that the Schumann frequency, the 7.83 hertz, that is the background hum of the earth, I personally believe that that's one of the harmonics that the human body functions best with. So
Right.
for me personally, I have a frequency device that I carry
Oh,
around with me that stays in my pocket or in my purse 24/7. And I will often set it to the Schumann frequency, right? The
okay.
resonant hum of the earth. I do that when I know I'm going to have a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, because that is one of the harmonics for our physical bodies. So when you
Right.
can amplify the harmonics, you reduce the stuff that is not in resonance, right? So I hope that
Okay.
answered your question, but
Oh, that's
I don't have anything to like back that up with. That's just my own personal experience with it. But yes,
right.
I agree 100%.
I'm going to take a minute here and just go through the chat. We have a few people here that we should say hello to. So Denise is here. She says hello.
Hello.
And Keith has a show just prior to this show. And he's got the shared out. And Susan's on tomorrow.
So Keith has a great question. If you don't mind, I'd love to
Oh,
address it. He says, does the solar flares affect it? Seems like when huge solar flares hit, earthquakes pick up, and that is a great observation. And yes, that is true. So, um, I think it's a chicken and an egg thing, right? I think it depends on who you ask. On is the solar flare causing the earthquake, or is the earthquake causing the solar flare? We are in a tidally we're combined, right? So I don't know which one comes first. What I do know is that when we have heightened solar activity, we tend to have clusters of heightened earthquake activity at the same time. From a spiritual perspective, when I look at this from a very zoomed out perspective, for me as a human being, maybe the easiest way for me to receive energy from source or whatever you want to call it is through a solar
right.
flare, because I have no resistance to that. That gets sent down here. I receive it as a human being. It anchors in through me, a human battery made of mostly water, hits the earth, channeled through me, and then expands the earth. That's how I see it. But again, this is from my own experience and what I've seen. But yes, if I hope that answers the question.
Yes, I think so. So, and he's also saying when it's higher, he feels better, more energy as well.
I agree. I agree. The device is called the AHA Halo. If you guys are interested, the reason I have this is because this company asked me if I would test it, so they sent it to me, and it does work. It does work. This is called, for me, it works. It's called the AHA Halo. I know you can't see it.
Oh, okay.
Um,
I've
uh,
seen other ones that are the green kind of looks like a microchip, and you
yeah.
can hang it on the wall or like hold it on your body
So the
too.
thing I like about this is it has a 3-foot radius, and it's small, will fit in my pocket, and it doesn't make any audible noise. Although I will tell you, I hear several of these frequencies. Like I was cycling through it one day and I can hear them, and I didn't realize that like other people can't. So I'm sitting there and I'm cycling through this, and my husband, who is not part of any of this stuff, I'm sitting there and I go, that is such an annoying sound. And he looks at me and he thought I was talking about him because he cannot hear it. He's like, "What do you mean? You don't like what I'm saying?" I'm like, "What? No, the sound this thing is making." He's like, "What sound? It's not making any sense." And it ended up being almost an argument because he can't hear it, but I can. And
Oh my gosh.
that kind of leads it to the idea that as we become more sensitive to our energy and the world around us, we start to pick up on stuff that people around us may not be perceiving. Doesn't mean it's not there. We're just
Yeah.
not looking at it, right? So
Yeah.
that expands as you go through that.
We were just talking about that tonight with the old the TV remotes, the Zenith ones that made the noise when you push the button, the frequencies, and some people couldn't hear that, some people could, but I think it was very, very low. So same idea, right? Like if
Yes.
someone was sitting on it and certain people are like, could you find that TV remote and shut it off?
Yes. Well, and I think too, it's important to remember that we are all individual instruments, right? When you think of frequency, we are all individuals. So the way you hear things and perceive things is going to be different than the way someone else does. But the
Right.
more aware you are of your frequency, the more aware you are when something out of the normal shows up. This is one of the main reasons I try to tell people when you first start learning about your own energy, one of the most helpful things you can do is learn Reiki. Learn level 1 Reiki, not because I want you to do it on anybody else, but because it teaches you what your energy feels like. And when
Right.
you know what your energy feels like, you're much more aware when it's off kilter, out of balance, misaligned, and you can self-correct instead of going to someone else to get them to correct you. You self-correct. This is part of the evolution of you into I can tell when I'm out of alignment. I can tell when I need something. I don't need you to tell me that. As a nurse, right? I
Yeah.
spent 25 years as a nurse. I have master's degrees, was in a PhD program. I understand medicine. I have not been to a doctor in 5 years because
Wow.
I don't need them anymore and I'm not at all saying don't go to the doctor. Please listen. I am not at all saying don't go to the doctor. But what I am saying is when you start to listen to your body, when it first starts to get out of alignment and you correct it first, it doesn't progress into I have to go to the doctor and get a pill to fix this, right?
Right. Oh, right. Yes.
So that's part of that is learning to listen to your body, learning to attune to yourself. And Reiki just happens to be one established tool that has good vocabulary for what you're feeling. It's not the
Right.
only way, but it just is one way.
Right. And qigong and things like that too, where you're
Everything,
doing your full body scan. I
absolutely
find,
everything.
yes, for sure. There's so many different modalities out there. And I'm going to get into that as the weeks go on.
Right. And
Different
as a sound
modalities.
healer, I mean, you've got
Yeah.
all the lowdown on all that
Well,
stuff.
I teach Reiki as well, but I
Good deal.
find even that, like sometimes sometimes with the Schumann and what's going on around, you're really not sure at first whether it is you or if it is something else going on outside of you, right?
Right. Right. And it can be very empowering to recognize, oh, maybe I'm not totally insane, right? But the thing with the Schumann is it's just a
Hi,
tool.
Linda.
Hi, Linda. It's just a tool, right? So if for example, if there's a day when I come on and I say, listen, today is going to be one of those days where you might have your triggers going off left and right. That isn't an invitation for you to avoid your triggers. That's an
Right.
invitation for you to find out what is it that's triggering me and why does it have the power to determine how I experience my day. That's what it's for. It's not so that you avoid them. It's so that you deal with them head first, walking in consciously instead of feeling blindsided by whatever, you know?
Yes. So I just wanted to, that it was very interesting. It was on the weekend with the Italian chart
Yeah.
and the red lines on
Yes.
there. And do you happen to have that
I don't
chart?
have it on me.
Oh, no.
Did you
Okay.
happen to see the follow-up to that? Because I did a lot of research on that and it ended up being true, right? So
Oh, yes. Yes, I did see that.
right. So that
So,
red this goes along with the idea of discernment, right? So that red showed up on the graph, and there were many creators that immediately jumped to the conclusion that it was whatever, right? And no one wanted to be aliens more than me, trust me, right? But you have got to practice discernment. You have got to realize that you live on a physical planet with a lot of stuff going on. And Occam's razor tends to be true. The simplest explanation tends to be the truest explanation, right? So when
Right.
I'm looking at this, the first thing I noticed is I'm not getting any hits off of this psychically. I'm receiving nothing from this. I'm not getting anything from this. It doesn't sound like anything to me. I'm not getting anything from this. So instead of talking myself into, oh, maybe I'm just not tuned to the aliens, I start to ask myself, well, what else could it be that's here on the earth that maybe I don't know what that is? And I started to research, and I looked at the frequency range. What human made devices would use this frequency range? Because the regularness of that pattern, that does not appear in nature. That is not natural. And it had
Right.
a clear small crescendo, small, and it repeated itself twice. It was a cycle, it was a message, right? So when I just started researching it, it literally didn't take that long before I found out that's the frequency channel that NATO uses.
For
Sure enough,
submarines. Yes. Yeah.
Sure enough, within 24 hours, there was a news report that there was a strike on Ukraine, I believe, by Russia, and NATO had to intervene, and they were communicating with their submarines, and that's what we were seeing. So,
Right.
again, as much as I want it to be aliens, friends, it's not always aliens. You got to use your discernment, you know?
Keith says he loves solar flares.
I'm a big fan of the solar flare. We have to remember, there are people who feel those flares as soon as they leave the sun. There are people more like me who don't feel the impact until it impacts the earth. I'm a very tactile, energetic person. I cannot be in a crowded room because it overwhelms my energy, right? I
Right.
cannot, I physically will get physically ill because my biosphere cannot handle the surge of energy because it's become very porous.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, and you used to teach, didn't you?
Medicine. Yeah.
Yes. And so how was that for you when you were?
It wasn't. It doesn't. That's why I'm not doing. So it's a pattern that I've noticed to be very common for people is if you have a very strongly held physical belief. For me, science was everything. I was a nurse for 25 years. I fully believed in everything science had to tell me. There was nothing I was going to believe unless science proved it to me. So much so I was teaching that, right? So
Yeah.
for me to even consider that there was something else out there, the event that had to take place to get my attention had to be monumental because I was going to dismiss it. So I had to lose faith in the one thing that I fully believed in, which was science. So
Right.
for me, what changed was I was diagnosed with a very serious illness. And when COVID hit and I couldn't teach medicine, I'm sent home. I'm literally sitting at this exact desk, and I was bored out of my mind one day. And I'm sitting here because I have ADD. I have a fidget toy in my hand right now. I'm like, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? I go, oh, I have access to one of the best medical libraries on the planet, and I've never researched my own disease. Oh, that's so dumb. So I get into the library and I start researching my own disease. And long story short, I figured out I didn't have this disease that I had been told and was being treated for. And this disease was life ending. This disease was catastrophic in nature, and it produced so much fear inside of me, right?
Right.
So when I discovered this, of course, I didn't just throw everything away. I took all this knowledge and I went to my specialist and I said, this is what I found. Help me with this. And there was a very clear pivotal moment sitting in this doctor's office. And I know that he knows what I do for a living. I know he knows that I teach doctors, right? And
Right.
he
Yeah.
turned around and looked me in the eye and he said, I'm the expert. You listen to me. And if you don't do what I'm telling you, you're going to get sick and you're going to die.
Oh
And
my
I
God.
immediately thought to myself, oh, no, 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 we're not doing this. And I said, thank you very much. I left his office. I got every one of my records and I went directly to my primary care doctor's office. I didn't even call. I just went there and I walked in and I knew his front desk lady because I was in there all the time. And I said, I need to talk to him and I need to talk to him about this and I need to talk to him about it right now. So he sat with me like 2 days later. He sat with me for over 30 minutes and went through my records one after the other because he said, I'm sure you have this. I'm sure there's no way they would be treating you for 2 years and not know you. No. It was one test missing, didn't have it. So he ordered the test. The next morning, I don't have this disease. And my entire
Oh my
world
gosh.
fell apart. My entire world fell apart because at that point, I had allowed myself to so fully become the diagnosis that when
Yeah,
you took that away from me, I did not know who I was. But
right.
because I was so firmly rooted in science, that's how it had to happen for me. But once that happened, I tell people all the time, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I'm sitting there in a very Western medicine based university looking at this material and feeling dissonance. I'm sitting in this big office that I worked my butt off to get and feeling like I don't want to be here. And I didn't know how to reconcile that. And for a long time, it was frustrating and depressing. And I spent weeks, months, maybe just sort of going through the motions of my life because I didn't understand. Well, if this isn't true, then that's not true. And that's not, it's kind of like when a kid figures out Santa's not real. Now, all of a sudden, you're like, well, wait a minute. Does that
Yeah,
mean the tooth fairy's not real? What about the Easter bunny? Like everything starts to came apart at the seams. And it
right.
took me a while to pull myself back together. And I just decided one day, okay, all right, fine. This is not what I want to do. What do I want to do? And I had to start taking one step, no matter how small, one step in the right direction. And it in the moment, it can feel like it's taking forever, but you have to take those small steps. Otherwise, you're going
Right.
to stay right where you are. And complacency is a killer. Staying complacent in your life will smother the passion out of you every single time. And that, I hate to use the word they because I don't know how to define they, but I know that it's easier to control someone who doesn't have passion. So the easier they, whoever they are, can make it for you to stay complacent in your life, the easier it is for them to control the flow of information, right?
Yeah. And just lost all trust for sure in science.
No, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't
No?
say that. I would say it made me recognize that science is incomplete because there's good, valid information in what we have. But I don't believe that dis-ease should get to the point that it needs to be treated with a pill. But
Right.
because of our society and the way our society is currently built, we now are at the point that we need the pill, right? So the way I look at things in society and medicine is when you're in the middle of depression, it is really hard to work on yourself because you don't see any other option. It is all consuming. And if you've never had depression, you do not get to tell me that you can just make a choice. That's not how it works. So you go to the doctor, you talk to the doctor gives you a pill. The pill helps you see outside of the depression, maybe for the first time in years, and you
Right.
start making actionable changes to fix the underlying cause of the depression with the
Right.
goal of getting off the pill, right? But
Yeah.
our society has gotten very comfortable with take this pill, you feel better. I don't need to do the work.
Right.
That's where we
Yeah.
are. And
Right.
that's where we're stuck, right? So I believe fully that Eastern and Western, there's a harmony that needs to happen, but one has to listen to the other. One is not more right than the other. It's a harmony between them that needs to happen.
Right. So, can you tell me a bit about your classes that you offer?
Yes. So I actually have a free class on the school platform, all about the Schumann. There are three free classes, I think. One is called Everyday Energy. So if you're interested in learning more about anything to do with how energy may affect you in your physical body, in your biosphere, all that sort of stuff, that's what that class is for. There's also a free class on the Schumann resonance, everything I've talked about with the Schumann, how it could be affecting you. There's even, a downloadable like PDF with full
Yes.
color illustrations. You can go
Yeah.
there and download that and reference that. But again, I want everyone to remember I'm like your kindergarten teacher. I'm just giving you the basics. I want you to grow from here. I
Right.
also have a class about crystals on there, but these courses are designed. I mean, I have a master's degree in healthcare education. My background is in medicine and science. I built these classes to help you understand that you are more than what you think you are. And once you start to recognize the actual power you have, you can change your world. It's not going to
Right.
happen in
Exactly.
30 seconds, right? Because there's a lot of momentum built up behind you, but you absolutely can change your life. I am living proof of that. I've been doing this. I've been working for myself now just over a full year. And there are people that I used to see every single day at my job at the university. I just ran into one over the Thanksgiving weekend, did not recognize me. I have not cut
Oh,
my hair. I have not changed a thing about me, but they did not recognize me for a good 20 seconds. But it's because frequency wise, I am
right.
no longer on the same frequency where they are. So it's kind of like when you hear a radio station that's a little staticky, you can hear it, but you may not understand it until you fully tune in. That's how they are with me because I have adjusted my frequency to one that feels better for me. And they're still where they are, which is fine. But it takes a minute because they're used to seeing me in a frequency range where I'm no longer found.
I've had that feeling before too when you run into someone and you're looking at them and you really have to look hard and to
Yes.
actually see, and then all of a sudden you do recognize them. Is
Yes,
that
and everything is energy, and so
Mhm.
when 2 people who are on different frequency levels try to have a conversation, sometimes it feels like it's that feeling where you're like, "Are they even hearing me right now?" Because they are like, "What? Are we having the same conversation?" That happens, and it's not necessarily because they're trying to do something or they're trying to not listen. But if you are broadcasting at 101.9 and they are receiving at 98.5, not the same, not the same, not the same. There's loss in translation. So at that point, typically what I tend to do is I go, you know what? Let's talk about something else. How about them bears? And move on to another subject. We don't have to talk about that.
Oh my gosh, I'm so far behind in the comments here. I'll have to get used to doing this, but
You're
going
doing
through
great. You're doing great.
there must be a way I just toggle down, right? I'm not really sure. Maybe
Yeah.
I can.
So Keith has a great point. So as someone who used to teach medicine, the amount of information that these young people are trying to learn in a year and a half, because I want you to remember they're only in physical classes for a year and a half. For the rest of those 4 years, they're in the field. They're learning on their feet. So they have to cram everything you want them to know about the human body into a year and a half's worth of classes. Incredibly stressful. And then you throw them out in the world and you say, go.
Um,
It does happen a lot with people you used to know. When your frequency range changes, and just like when you're hearing an instrument, you can tell when it's out of pitch, right? You can tell when the frequency's off. You can tell when someone's frequency is shifted and you're having a conversation with them. Absolutely.
okay. And then, so we had kind of talked a little bit before about the Schumann. So for it, what I was thinking was we need to pick um, the readings for an area near us. Because I'm in Canada, I thought, oh, I can't be looking at one. I should be looking at the one in Alberta, but ideally, it doesn't really matter because that frequency is affecting me as well.
Yes, and each station, so the one in Russia, the one in Italy, the one in the US, they are measuring different frequency ranges also. Some measure ELF, some measure ULF, some measure VLF. They're not all measuring the same thing. So if you tell yourself, so for example, if you open the Russian graph and you see the big white energy and you're like, wow, yes, I'm feeling that. And then you open the graph from, say, South Dakota and it's not there, then the question comes in, well, am I making this up? They're measuring different things. So whichever graph you're using, just be consistent. It doesn't have to be any one graph, right? I chose the Russian graph because that's where I see the greatest correlation. I've looked at the other ones, but the frequency range that the Russian graph is measuring is the one that has the greatest correlation for me, right?
Okay. Yeah.
The ionosphere is for lack of a better term, it's like a marshmallow. It's like a cloud. It absorbs and redistributes. It's just because it happens in Italy doesn't mean only Italy receives it. It spreads out across the entire planet, just like a solar flare, right?
Right. And then, so I think I was talking to you too. So my thought is that these frequencies have been changing, and Earth's frequency has been changing as well.
Yes.
And spiritually, I feel that it is changing, supporting us through the ascension. Or are we supporting Earth, or is Earth supporting us in a way? Like, I don't know.
So 2 questions.
Yeah.
Number 1, does it matter?
No, I guess not.
Right. Number 2, chicken and egg.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're energetic beings living on a giant reverberation chamber. I don't know. What I can tell you that I do know that I'm very certain of is humanity is at an apex point where it's going through an evolution. If you look at the way humanity as a physical beings functions now versus 50 years ago, 100 years ago, is different. ADHD, ADD, and autism for me are 2 sides of the same evolutionary coin. And here's what I mean by that. ADD gives you the ability to function on multiple things at multiple times, right? In our environment, what are we constantly bombarded with? Multiple things at multiple times, right?
Yeah.
ADD is a mechanism of evolution that has been labeled a disorder because it's coming into a system that's telling you there's only one way, there's only one way, there's only one way. There's nothing wrong with you when you have ADD. You are evolving to fit the environment that you find yourself in. Autism is about making it quieter, right? This is a dualistic universe. So if we have evolution on one end to allow more in, we must, by the rules, have the opposite side to balance the coin, right?
Right.
Autism is about slowing down, quieter, less speaking, less focus. It's the balancing, right? We as human beings do not know how to communicate with someone who has autism yet, but we're getting there. They are on the cutting edge with the way they communicate non-verbally. They are on the cutting edge. We are wrong. They are on the cutting edge. So when you look at these things, you've got to stop telling yourself that it's wrong because it's different. It feels wrong because you've been told that complacency is right, and that's wrong.
Sorry, I'm just going to look at.
Yes, Keith said, like VHF and UHF on old TVs, different views and meanings of delivering the same thing. Yes, yes, yes. We're the same age, Keith.
Okay. So I think I did actually have question for you. So, and maybe we've kind of gone through this, but this is something something that I just wrote down, thinking for maybe a closing question for you. So if Earth could speak directly to us right now, What do you think that Earth would say about this moment in our evolution? And I think that we kind of just went there, but what would you say?
She would be like my mom. My mom is constantly saying, pack snacks. It might be a long ride. Pack some snacks. We're in for a ride. We're in for a ride.
Yeah,
Physically, our planet is changing. Physically,
yeah,
it is
yeah,
undeniable that our planet is changing. Our temperature is rising. Our oceans are shifting. The African continent is dividing. Physically, our Earth is changing. Evolutionarily, physically, we are evolving, right? Our physical
yes,
bodies are evolving to handle different amounts of radiation, different amounts of input. It is illogical to tell yourself that you are not also evolving on an energetic level. That would be lunacy to me. It is far more logical to think, well, if my planet that I live on, my environment that I find myself in is evolving, then I must also evolve to stay there. It is evolve or extinction. Hello, that's how it works, right?
yeah,
So we are also evolving. Evolving is uncomfortable. It's
yeah.
uncomfortable because it only happens when it has to, right? If we could stay the way we were, we wouldn't have to evolve. So Mother Earth is saying, pack your snacks and maybe some sunscreen, you know?
Yeah, that's right. I feel like it's so noticeable too because more people are coming into your space and into your daily life that are that same vibration. Like it's just amazing how people are being put into your path lately too.
Well, but it's just resonance, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
all it is. If you
yeah.
think of two tuning forks, if you have
Magnetic
two different
attraction.
tuning forks that are 740 hertz, if you hit this one will reverberate, even
Mm,
if they aren't touching. So that's all that is you are aligning with the people who are on the same frequency that you are. And it
right.
can feel very magical in the moment when you're aware that it's happening, right? Because suddenly you're like, oh my God, how did you suddenly just land in my life? But all it is just
Yeah.
syncing up with the right waveform. It works in both directions. You can do that to have a great day or you can do that to have a bad day. Test yourself. It works.
Oh, Denise like that too. Pack your snacks.
Always pack your snacks.
I can't seem to get to the bottom of these here. Well, it was such a delight having you on. I love listening to you every day, and you are a great teacher.
Thank you.
There's lots of knowledge there. I
Endless.
invite everybody who's listening tonight to find Erin. It's Consciously Erin on YouTube, Instagram,
Everywhere.
Facebook. Yeah, everywhere.
It's
Um,
always the same. That's important for everybody to know. There are so many scam accounts out there. My name is exactly the same on every single platform. There are no spaces, no dashes, no weird characters. I'm not messaging you. So please know that, okay?
Yes. So at the top of the chat, I put Erin's website. So it's www.consciouslyerin.com. So I thank you so much for being on my show.
I am
And
so grateful for the opportunity to be here, especially on your inaugural show. How special
I
is that?
know,
I
I
feel
know.
incredibly special to have been invited to be part of this.
Yeah.
It's going to be so
Thank you so much. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for being in the chat. Maybe by next week I will have the chat all figured out and I'll be a little quicker on that. So thanks for joining everybody.